What's the most ridiculous reason someone refused to pay for something? I was waiting tables at a steakhouse when this woman ordered our most expensive dinner, the $40 ribeye with all the sides. She asked for it well done. I confirmed twice. She insisted she wanted it cooked all the way through. 20 minutes later, I brought it out. She cut into it, checked that it was well done, and started eating. I came back to check on her 10 minutes later, and half the steak was gone. Everything's great, she said. Came back again when she was down to the last few bites. Asked if she wanted dessert. She said sure. Ordered the chocolate lava cake. Ate the whole thing. Then when I brought the check, she looked at me like I just slapped her mother. I'm not paying for that steak. I asked what was wrong with it. It was overcooked. I reminded her she'd ordered it well done, and she'd already eaten 90% of it. She said that's how she gathered evidence for her lawsuit. She ate the entire steak to make sure it was definitely overcooked all the way through. I got my manager because this was above my pay grade. He came over and she immediately started yelling about how we'd ruined her anniversary dinner. She wasn't with anyone. She was sitting alone. She said her husband was in the bathroom, but she'd been there for 2 hours and he'd never appeared. Then she pulled out her phone and said she was calling her lawyer. She dialed a number and put it on speaker. And this voice came on trying to sound professional, but it was obviously just some dude eating chips. You could hear the crunching. He said, "Law office, how may I legal you today? How may I legal you?" She didn't even notice. My manager asked for the lawyer's bar number. The guy on the phone said 7, just 7. My manager said that's not how bar numbers work. The guy hung up. She immediately called back and the same voice answered with, "Different law office." Completely different lawyer speaking, but she wasn't done. She said she'd pay with a check if we insisted on being difficult. She pulled out a checkbook from a bank I'd never heard of called First National Bank of America's Trust. The checks looked like she'd printed them at home. The account number was 123456778. She signed it Madonna. Her name was Carol. My manager said we don't take checks anyway, especially not checks from banks that don't exist. She said that's discrimination against people who bank at lesser-known institutions. She demanded to speak to his manager. He said he was the owner. She demanded to speak to the owner's owner. At this point, other customers were watching and some were recording. She stood up and announced to the entire restaurant that we were forcing her to pay for food we'd ruined on purpose. One guy yelled back, "You ate the whole thing." She said, "That's not relevant to the situation." Then she tried to leave, but my manager said he'd have to call the cops if she didn't pay. She said, "Go ahead." Her uncle was the chief of police. My manager said, "Which police department?" She said, "All of them. Every police department." Her uncle ran all the police. The cops showed up and she tried to convince them the steak had attacked her first, like the meat had become sentient and forced itself into her mouth. One cop just stared at her and said, "Ma'am, that's not how food works." She said he didn't understand advanced steakology. They gave her a choice of paying or going to jail. She pulled out a credit card that was clearly just a gift card from Starbucks with the logo covered in Sharpie. It got declined because it wasn't a credit card. She acted shocked and said the bank must have frozen her millionaire account. Finally, she paid with a real credit card while crying about how we'd ruined her life over a perfectly good steak that was somehow also terrible. As she was leaving, she turned around and yelled, "I'm going to leave such a bad Yelp review." My manager said we're not on Yelp. She said, "Then I'll put you on Yelp just to leave a bad review." Next week, she came back and tried to order the same steak. When we told her she was banned, she said she'd never been there before and we were confusing her with her evil twin. The hostess pulled up the security footage from last week on her phone. The woman watched herself on video and said, "That's clearly deepfake."